fans, to another epic round of boxing. You know me, I am your humble host, Tummy Tom. I am the human body snatcher, all that silly goodness that goes along with this show. But in all reality, we actually have a very good show ahead of us for you. The very first thing we're going to do is tell you, please smash that like button. Don't touch it, smash it. And after that, check yourself if you have not subscribed to this podcast already. And then after that, we can sit back, kick back, relax, and enjoy a great show. We're going to recap the Chocolatito Estrada fight, number 3. And then we're actually going to talk. We're just going to basically lay out a couple different fights that are happening and talk more in depth on a specific one for a bunch of fights that are taking place this weekend in boxing. So let's start right off with Estrada, Chocolatito 3, the trilogy. So Estrada gets the win, right? El Gallo wins this one. I wouldn't say wins it running away, but compared to the second fight in which I thought he lost, I agreed with them giving him the win in this fight. We'll say that. So for starters, I just want to touch on Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez because, you know, he just deserves so much credit, man. People don't even now know his name so much unless you're an avid boxing fan. If you're in the know, you know what the hell is up with Chocolatito, and you pay him his respect. But a lot of people don't even know his name still, and they never did. But Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez was pound for pound number 1 in an era over Canelo Alvarez, Manny Pacquiao, Andre Ward, those types. That was back in his day when he was ranked as the best fighter. The knockout to Cerise de Katsoy, Rung Vasai, just set him back. People wrote him off. But even then, before then, people didn't know his name. It was kind of like now. He is a Hall of Famer. He is a multiple-time world champion. So he will be all right. He has already put in so much work in this sport that I just wanted to salute the man. That being said, this time around, and as a giant Chocolatito fan, this time around he looks slower. He looked a little slower, and it's a sad thing that you see sometimes, and it's not like he's dead or anything, but it's just something that you see sometimes. And with boxing especially, you know, you kind of get older overnight, because the thing is that it's not, you can progressively show that you have holes in certain areas that aren't getting exposed right away all at once, and progressively get, you know, exposed in that sense, kind of audited in that sense as far as technique goes. But, you know, as far as age goes, man, it's either like you're still able to do it or you aren't. And seeing a guy like lose a step, like for instance, Pacquiao, he was older as well, right? He's been older. But pulling off that Keith Thurman win on that comeback was absolutely incredible, if you guys remember that. So this, I would kind of compare with that. Like, Chocolatito has been old for this smaller weight class for a long time. It's nothing new. And so seeing him on the comeback after the knockout to Rung Vasai, and seeing how he's put in so much work, seeing just his last fight before this destroy that Martinez kid that was undefeated and younger and had everything going for him. And Chocolatito just looking so impressive. Like, yes, a veteran performance, but also just didn't look like he had lost a step, right? Pacquiao with the Thurman win and all these things, even at this older age, and looking like, you know, he might not be in his prime, and we know that, but we can't necessarily say he's really obviously lost a step yet. This was kind of similar. It just happens all at once. When we saw Manny Pacquiao go in to fight Yordenis Ugas, that it just showed, okay, he's Pacquiao, so he's fast enough, but he's not as fast. He's not pulling the trigger as much, and when he is trying to throw his hands, he's just not doing he's lost a step, right? And it shows all at once, and that's what comes with age. I feel like we've seen that with Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez here in this fight. Even in the rounds that he was winning, which was kind of like a lot of the mid rounds, like after round 5, he stole back a few rounds to try to make it interesting. And for fans of Estrada here, we're definitely going to give that man his due here in a moment. But I just wanted to kind of touch on this stuff that I saw from Chocolatito. One interesting stat is in the first 2 fights, but especially even just alone in that second fight. But if you combine even the first whole 2 fights that they had, Chocolatito averaged 33 punches per round for the first 2 fights, and in this fight, it fell right off a cliff. He's averaging 13 punches in a round. So that's less than half of what we're used to. So that's truly showing you numbers of, just seeing the numbers fall right off a cliff. It's not even close. As far as Estrada, yeah, like I said, I thought he won this more clearly now because he came out, good, winning those first, rounds. He probably took the first 5. I mean, 1 is like iffy and not too much going on there, but basically Estrada took the first 5 rounds, and then had some other good close rounds where you could have edged Chocolatito or could have given it to Estrada. Chocolatito had like a strong, I believe it was a 7th round, and he definitely could have took 7, 8, maybe 9, right? Some of those rounds, maybe 10, or he did take, was it 10 or 11? He took maybe both of those as well, so it looked close. And then Estrada had a dominant finish for a guy that started strong and his rounds were earlier. He took the hell out of that 12th round as well, clipping Chocolatito. So I also thought Chocolatito, as we touched on, his whole style is a come forward, head in your chest, inside fighting type of style. We showed you the numbers on how he doesn't really throw jabs a lot. That, again, showed in this fight, but that's normal. But if he's not fast enough to get in with his slickness, defense, getting his hands up, and not fast enough to find the inside, he was basically chasing the whole night. As far as footwork goes, he was trying to cut off the ring instead of chase, right, technically speaking, but you get what I'm saying. He was following Estrada around the ring all night, and Estrada used that well, and that surprised me. So Estrada, as the younger guy, Estrada looked fast. That's another thing I want to say. We made a clear point, not just being a Chocolatito fan, but how good he looked versus the last fight with Estrada and Cortez, where you could have argued that Estrada should have lost that fight. He didn't look that good at all against a lesser opponent. It all made sense. But on this show, we're here to tell you when we're wrong, man. It's okay. It's okay to be wrong sometimes as a boxing fan. We don't have to bite each other's heads off. I will always show up in this podcast and tell you, hey, I was wrong. Sometimes fights are close. I might not think somebody should have won. Estrada should have won this fight, and he did. I thought he fought well as you could going off the back foot. And when I say that, I don't mean that he was, evading and using footwork around the ring, which he was. But also just literally doing stuff that you're not supposed to do while throwing punches while moving backwards. You're supposed to have your feet planted at least for a moment in throwing a punch, or you're stepping off of that back foot while throwing your punch. So he was fighting a lot of times throwing kind of wild punches, but because he was so fast and because Chocolatito was just chasing him, he was able to get away with a lot of this stuff. I think it was the speed was a super big part in this, and also both these guys have cardio for days, but like I said, besides the cardio, even like the will of it all, if Chocolatito's winning back some of those rounds, and you figured I should have bagged enough possibly in these first rounds anyway, he really wanted to cement that last round, and you could feel that. So, hats off to Estrada for sure. He looked damn good in that fight. And moving on, let's touch on some of these really quick. So, on Saturday, the first first fight, because these aren't going to be deep breakdowns right here, but we do have a lot of boxing. Mick Conlan is back. Michael Conlan taking on Kareem Garifai. And, you know, that'll be a good they're not really giving Michael Conlan good competition again yet because of the Leigh Wood fight. But Mick Conlan's always a fun watch, and I actually do really think that he could do very well with more tough competition, because I thought he was handedly winning that Leigh Wood fight before he got viciously knocked out. I mean, Wood definitely needed that, otherwise it would have been a one-sided dominant performance from him. So I want to see how Mick Conlan looks coming back. That'll be a cool fight. We also have, of course, Terrence Crawford taking on David Avanesian. A lot of people hating on this. I'm not going to hate on the fight. It's just that, yes, Crawford should definitely win this fight. I mean, let's just not twist words. He should win the hell out of this fight. And as far as like career moves and stuff, like, man, you know, he's doing this with the new promotion for a pay-per-view for BLK Prime. You know, $40 if you want to buy the pay-per-view. I'm not going to buy that pay-per-view. Oh, I've only well wishes for Terrence Crawford. I hope that he can, if he is a free agent, if he is not finding a promoter and a network to align himself with, that's fine. But you have to be doing that the right way. So I hope that they pay him. Let's say that. I know that they paid him half of the money already, and so people seem to think that's good enough, like he's fine. I mean, they paid him half to get him in the door. He smartly should have definitely at the bare minimum asked for that to even agree to this thing with a brand new strange promotion. But I hope that they pay the man. Teofimo Lopez versus Sandor Martin. As usual, friend of this show, Boxing Gems. I'm going to refer you to go check out his breakdown video, because he's going to be touching on a lot of stuff in that video. Watched it earlier. That he's just going to be able to do it a lot better than me. But that should be a good fight, and it is. I mean, he's breaking the things down as only he could. But I do have a lot of respect for Sandor Martin. Mikey Garcia is over the hill at this point, and I think that's obvious. But still, besides Mikey's role in kind of falling off, the fight with him and Sandor Martin wasn't as much about Mikey falling off to me as it was about, look at what Sandor Martin is able to do. That's more what that fight was about. So I am excited to see this fight. And because on the contrary, Teofimo Lopez, who's, supposedly, supposed to be in his prime and young and extraordinarily athletic and talented, as the supposed better fighter, has come off of, a loss and only regained a win over much lesser competition. So this is a good fight. I think that this is appropriate as far as matchmaking goes for Teofimo Lopez at this point, actually, because you don't just want that shitting the bed against Kambosos, in the way that he did. I don't think that we want to just see him get right back in there with the very best in the division, and being that he's moved up to 140, which is a whole new division as well. This is appropriate matchmaking, I think. And Austin Trout is coming back, fighting Jose Sanchez Charles. That should be cool. Now, here's the one that I'm going to touch on, because I feel like I can do that in my lane here, and have done some research especially about this fight. Josh Warrington versus Luis Alberto Lopez. This fight will be good. I truly believe that. This fight will probably be also another reason why I mainly wanted to touch on this more than the others, is that there's so much fights on this weekend. We tried to keep our shows condensed as possible for you guys. And this one, I think, is going to be the best, most fan-friendly fight of them all, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. So, Josh Warrington, hell of a fighter, fighting out of Leeds in the UK, and this is going to be in his hometown. Josh Warrington had a very promising start of his career, very big hype behind him, especially out of the UK. Those in Ireland and the UK, those guys really get behind their guys, man. That's very appreciated and noticed by me as well. But he was hyped up as a lot of their guys were. He did look very good. Josh Warrington did look very good. Former world champion. Now, he suffered his loss to Mauricio Lara. And when Mauricio Lara beat him, Mauricio Lara beat the absolute dog shit out of Josh Warrington. That is important because that is a lot of damage. We're not talking about when you see a fight like that and how he went to the hospital and it wasn't a standard check after a fight because it's a long fight. It's like a bad hospital visit, bad recovery time from that Lara fight. We saw the second one, and that got stopped in a weird way, although I will say Warrington looked a lot better dealing with Lara in that second fight, but that got stopped short and was strange. It didn't exactly answer our questions, right, about what would have happened with those guys. Now, here's the thing. Styles make fights, right? So, it's not just about saying who is a better boxer, who is a better all these things. It's mainly gonna always be, styles make fights. Now, Josh, when you have two different styles that aren't exactly opposing each other, one's not just only defined as being a slick, good boxer, while the other is a walk you down brute. It's not that simple, but both these guys like to get into wars. Both these guys like to get worked up and warmed up into a point where their flow state in a fight is actually liking each other. So they will accommodate each other in that way, that this should be a war. And out of the two, Josh Warrington, has taken all that damage in that Lara fight. Also been in some other good scraps there. Whereas Luis Alberto Lopez is just really on his way up, right? And here's a good stat I want to throw your way about Luis Alberto Lopez, who will be coming into this Josh Warrington fight as an underdog. I'm going to list off the last 5 Luis Alberto Lopez fights. When he fought Andy Vences, okay? He came in as a plus 333 underdog. He won that fight. He came in again against Ruben Villa as a plus 600 underdog. He came in against Gabriel Flores as a plus 550 underdog. Beat the absolute brakes off of Gabriel Flores. Schooled him for every round in that fight, an impressive performance. And then came in against Isaac Lowe. That's the first time he's a minus 400, still close enough odds in boxing that he was a favorite out of these 5 fights, and will now come in as an underdog again. Those are just his last 5 fights. So he is showing up and winning all of these fights as an underdog. I don't think he'll be an underdog much longer, and I like Luis Alberto Lopez winning this fight, possibly even by stoppage. But I think because he's a dog, a straight-up pick on him is very good money for you. He won't be a dog much longer. All these underdog wins where the odds keep going from drastic to down to down to down. They're figuring out that this guy shouldn't be an underdog anymore. He is young. He is less fazed by wars and damage of boxing like Josh Warrington is. He is a good boxer. He is slick enough on the inside to where he does like to slip and counter, but also can be a brute and just stand there and exchange with you. But for instance, like in that Gabriel Flores fight, now Gabriel Flores overall, I want to be clear, is showing that he was not the prospect that we were promised in general, right? He's gone on from then and lost other fights and looked bad, but that win was super impressive to me, because that was the first person, for one, that exposed Flores in that way. And also, Luis Alberto Lopez just showing that, again, like, he walked him down the whole time and he landed hard shots, was taunting him, all this stuff, and still was slipping and countering. Good mindset to have. It's not just that I'm beating you up, he could take his punches, It's not like, oh, you hit so hard, Gabriel Flores. Like, he could take his punches, but he wasn't satisfied doing that. He still fought well. He was taunting the man, but he wasn't so cocky that he wasn't cognizant and aware in there to still hang on to a perfectly executed game plan throughout. Yeah, I like Luis Alberto Lopez winning this fight. He won't be an underdog much longer for sure. And that also, out of all of these fights, I think will be the most competitive, because I think Warrington, still is a dog. I mean, I know he is, right? And we know he is. But the only question is, will his body hold up? It's not about his heart or his mind, but at this point, will his body hold up getting into a full-on war with a young, athletic, dude who's willing to go to those places, so to speak? But until next time, loyal fight fans, this has been fun. Glad we could give you the full episode this time as well. And we'll be back next week. Please enjoy the fights. Check all these fights out, because boxing is the greatest sport on planet Earth.